Well, hello. Thanks for coming back to check out another video. I always feel like when I curl my hair like this, you can really tell that my hair is uneven, but that's okay. We are not here to talk about my hair struggles today. You clicked on this because now you're curious. Maybe you caught last week's video where we did my favorite shades from all of my BH Cosmetics palettes, and now you are here today to see what I pick as my least favorite shades from all of my BH Cosmetics palettes. I do want to first say that the birthstone palettes that I have, all of them have a pressed glitter in them, and I tried really hard not to pick the pressed glitter as my least favorite shade because obviously you guys have heard me say time and time again, I don't like the pressed glitter trend. I don't want to put that anywhere near my eyes, so I did try to not do that. I did pick the pressed glitter for one of the birthstone palettes. And then the other thing, I'm not the biggest fan of black eyeshadow. We all know that. I have gotten a little bit more adventurous and played with some black eyeshadow, but it's still not like a favorite shade. I could if palettes today quit coming out with black eyeshadows, I would honestly be a very happy girl. But that is not the case. So what I'm trying to say is I tried to not pick the black eyeshadow for all of the palettes that have a black in it. However, I do think I picked the black eyeshadow twice just because all of the other shades I actually really do enjoy. So if this all sounds very interesting to you, then just sit back, relax, let's get on into this. All right, we're gonna go in the exact same order that we did for the favorites video. So I feel really impressed with myself, like super organized. But anyway, so Amethyst for February is the first palette we will talk about. So my least favorite shade from here, this one was a really hard palette to choose because there's actually not really a bad shade, minus the pressed glitter, which we just ignore. But there's really not a bad shade in here. There's not a shade within this palette where I'm like, oh, I don't want to ever use that shade again. But the shade that I picked is actually this peachy shade, Humble, here. And again, it's not because it's a bad shade. It's simply because I wish that they would have fully committed to the purple vibes of this palette. Maybe gave us another shimmer or an even deeper berry shade instead of the peachy shade. Now the peachy shade is nice. It's nice to blend out those darker shades if you get a little too ham in your crease. So it is necessary in this palette. I think that it is still a well thought out shade, but I think it would have just been fun instead of only having two shimmers, maybe having a darker, more berry shimmer, because this shade is obviously more of a purple shade, but that's neither here nor there. You just need to know that Humble is my least favorite shade out of this palette. All right, so Emerald for May. This one was actually really easy to pick out my least favorite shade from. It was harder to pick out my favorite shade. But my least favorite shade is this shade Hard Worker right here. This is just a straight up shimmer that looks like coffee. It is a coffee brown color. And I don't know, I've used it a few times and it's fine. I'll use it in my outer V and then to help darken up a look and then fade another shimmer into it. So it's not like it goes unutilized, but it definitely goes underutilized. And again, much like with the Humble shade from this palette, I just wish that maybe we had another green. I think that could have been fun. I think that, just the dark shimmer brown, I just don't think a lot of people are out there using those. Now correct me if I'm wrong. If that is your favorite kind of shade, then let me know because I'm curious and I would love to know what eye look you would do with that. All right, Sapphire for September. So this one was pretty easy as well. It was a toss-up though. So I did contemplate picking this matte kind of blue purple shade simply because this shade can be a little bit patchy. But at the end of the day, I had to go with this Organized AF shade. Now on in the pan, it might look more like a black shade, but it's not. It's a very dark, black green kind of shade. And I just don't feel like it really adds anything to this palette. I don't like to use it to deepen up the looks when I do dip into this palette. I'll pull in for either just a straight up black or maybe some type of really dark kind of plummy red purple shade. So it's just this, that and the pressed glitter within here are really just, could have done without them, put something else in here. But overall, it's still a really fun palette and still glad that I have it. All right, so Citrine for November is the only birthstone palette where I did actually end up picking the pressed glitter. So that should say something. Every shade within this palette is so pretty and so fun and I love them all. So that is why I did go with the pressed glitter, simply because I feel like there was no way to put any other shade from this palette as my least favorite because I enjoy them so much. Really missed opportunity. I should have wore this palette and paired it with this yellow sweater and had like a really yellow moment, but we'll do that for next time. Okay, so then up next is Looking Like a Snack. When are you guys gonna get tired of me saying it that way? So I can't actually say the shade name from this palette because I don't want to get like demonetized, but I'll show it to you and you can read it for yourselves. How's that? So out of this whole palette, I did end up going with the black shade right there, simply because I don't know. It's not the fact that it's a black shade. It has those pink glitter shimmers in it, and I think you can tell in the swatch clip that it does have those. It's just unnecessary. Why are we still doing that? They blend away to nothing, like they're not even there. It's not like a fun, like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's unnecessary, I think. And I think someone told me once before they add the glitters into like matte blushes or matte shadows to help them blend better, but I think everyone knows how to make a black eyeshadow at this point, right? Like every palette has a black eyeshadow almost. So yeah, that has to be my least favorite shade out of this palette. And it does kind of also, it almost like if you cover it up, I feel like the palette almost becomes a little bit more on the monochromatic side and it looks like a lot of fun. But then you add this in and it just kind of, I don't know, it almost makes the whole thing turn a bit more darker. So yeah. All right, so the next palette we have is Do Not Disturb, and like I said in last week's video, but just in case you missed it, this is the palette that I have on my eyeballs today. It's really fun. I would have never thought to pair these kinds of blues and purples together, and I know that these are shades that I have represented throughout my collection time and time again, but it's just been so fun. It's not a color combination that I would have thought of, and I love it. So my least favorite shade though from this palette probably isn't going to be all that surprising to you guys. It's this center like baby blue shade right here called Silent Mode. You guys know pastels and me, we just don't get along. I don't really like doing full-on pastel looks, which thankfully with this palette I don't have to do full-on pastel looks. Like there are other shades within this palette, but I don't know. I just wish that it would have been maybe something different, like another kind of blue shade. You know what I mean? I think that would have been better, but I do honestly like this purpley pastel. I do have this shade on today. Okay, so then up next is our 16 pan eyeshadow palettes, and I have 6 of them. So the first one will be the Blueberry Muffin that we will talk about. Again, holographic background, so I really apologize. So for this palette, this one was really hard. There are so many good shades in here, but then I did think about it, and there is one shade that I absolutely avoid at all costs, and it is this shade right here, Baker's Dozen. Again, it's one of those black shades with shimmer in it. It's purple shimmer instead of pink shimmer like from the other palette, but again, it just blends away into nothing. Like I just don't understand it. I wish we could get away from that, and I wish every palette didn't have a black eyeshadow in it. Like I know some people might disagree with that, but just, do we always need a black eyeshadow? I don't think so. So yeah, every other shade in this palette is standout, top notch, one of my favorite, like a good shade. Like maybe they're not like all favorites, but they're all at least really good and decent and fun to play with, except for that shade. All right, so next up we will do Avocado Toast. Again, holographic background, very sorry. So this one, I think you guys are expecting me to pick the black eyeshadow, but again, I tried not to do that with every single palette. So with this one, I actually do have a shadow where I avoid it. Again, it's this Over Easy shade, this yellow right here, which honestly matches my sweater quite perfectly. Every time I use this though, it shows up as nothing on my lids. Like, I don't know, because I really thought the very first time I sat down to use this palette, I was like, I'm going to go in with this shade Over Easy, and then I'm going to go in with Avo Toast, and then I'm going to deepen it up with Superfood, and then I'm going to put one of these fun green shimmers all over my lid, and it's going to be this amazing monochromatic green look. But like I said, this just doesn't show up. Like I didn't get that gradient effect like I really wanted, and every time that I've tried to use it since, it's just, it doesn't do anything. So honestly, how I use that shade is like sometimes if I go a little bit too ham with like these darker colors right here, then I'll use Over Easy to like help blend that out and like soften the edges a little bit. But it's really just a throwaway shade in my opinion. Okay, Passion in Paris. So I do think this one is a little bit funny because like I said in last week's video, my favorite shade is this red right here. It is just this great kind of cool toned purpley red shade, and I love it. So my least favorite shade though from this palette is its counterpart. It's this shimmer shade that's right next to it called Moulin Rouge right here. These are like the exact same color, just one's a matte and one's a shimmer. So that's really funny, but I am not really on board with red shimmers just yet. Like, I can appreciate them. I know that they have their use, but I'm still working towards that. I have fallen in love with red mattes, but just not red shimmers. So that would be why this one has to be my least favorite. Okay, so up next is Party in Puerto Rico. So I believe that this shade is very similar to the one from the Emerald palette that we picked out as our least favorite, but it's this Cueva Ventana. Sorry if I'm butchering that. I don't speak Spanish, but I'm trying. So it's this shade right here. And again, it's just one of those like dark brown shimmer shades that I'm just like, why? Why do you want that? I can get behind dark brown mattes, but just the dark brown shimmers, I don't have like a need for that, you know? So that is why that is my least favorite shade. Okay, so Lost in Los Angeles is up next. So this is the Rainbow Pastel palette. Now this, it might be a little bit surprising, but I picked the purple right here, Abbot Kinney, as my least favorite. And so you might be thinking to yourself, like, well, you just showed us the Do Not Disturb palette and you said you liked the like pastel purple in there. And I actually have that pastel purple on today, but the undertones of them are a little bit different. Like the one from the Do Not Disturb palette isn't as, I don't know a good way to describe it. Maybe it's a little bit more warmer, I guess, than what this shade from Lost in Los Angeles is, because this Abbot Kinney shade, anytime I use it, I definitely feel like I look sickly. Like, I don't know. It doesn't really play well with like my undertone and like my complexion. So I really just try to avoid that shade. But honestly, the other like matte pastel shades within here are very nice to play with. And like I said, I can find ways to like use them and things like that. But that's just a shade where I avoid it. All right, so then our last 16 pan palette is the Smitten in Switzerland. And I forgot what I picked as my least favorite shade. How funny. Oh, now I remember. The whole reason I picked this shade as my least favorite shade was simply because of the multi-palette bingo that I did a while ago, where I used all of these 16 pan palettes to create a look. So in that video from this palette, I got this shade Fondue right here, and what was the point of that? Like, you can go back and watch it in that video. I put it on my crease and you can't even like tell. It's just one of those like basic kind of like, just, I don't know, for me it's like a skin tone shade, you know. I hate saying it that way, but that's what it is for me. And so I don't like it. Like, it has no purpose within this palette, because quite honestly too, these first 3 shades are super samey. Like, BH Cosmetics was pulling an Urban Decay a little bit here. So I just can't get behind that shade. I wish that they would have went in a different direction with it. Maybe it would have been really fun if they had given us like a lighter orangey yellow kind of shimmer to really pair nicely with this matte orange and matte brown down here. That's what they should have done, but they don't ask me my opinion. Okay, so then our last palette to go over, my least favorite shade, is the Litless palette. I think that the natural lighting is kind of washing out the name of this, but this was their holiday palette for 2021. And again, this is such a pretty palette. I don't tend to go for these larger palettes because I do feel a little bit overwhelmed, but I think that the layout that they went with for this palette makes it easy for your brain to see those color combinations to put together. So again, this one does have a pressed glitter in it. It's this red shade right here in the dead center, but I didn't pick that as my least favorite shade. I actually went with this cobalt blue shade right here called Midnight. So I like this shade in theory. It is such a pretty blue shade and it's super wearable. But this shade in particular is very patchy, and I know BH Cosmetics can do better. Like, hello, they have the Blueberry Muffin, and the shade within that's pretty comparable is so good. It's like a really nice kind of cool tone cobalt blue shade, which is exactly what this one is, but that Blueberry Muffin shade gives me no troubles whatsoever. Like, it blends out effortlessly. It's really fun to play with, and I actually really like that shade. But this one, like I said, super patchy, really dusty, just doesn't do much. Like after you blend it out, like you have to layer and layer and layer, and it's just no fun to play with. So that is why that would have to be my least favorite shade within this palette. So that wraps it up. That is all my BH Cosmetics palettes. Hopefully what you are seeing now is just like an overview of all of the swatches. So I think when I did my favorite shades, they definitely came out more kind of cohesive, looking like an actual palette. This one is really dark, and so I don't know if I would call it like a very cohesive color story. Like I can't see my least favorite shades being like a standalone palette like I can my favorite shades. But another idea that I'm toying with is using all of my favorite shades to do a look, and then using all of my least favorite shades to do a look. Well, maybe not all of them, because that would be pretty intense. That's 13 eyeshadows, but you get what I'm saying. Let me know if you would be into seeing either of those videos. And that is it. So I thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you're having a good day, a good night, or a good whatever. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye.